It's almost a daily mention that we hear that there are granola bars or our granola just blows their mind. That didn't expect a product to taste as good as ours does.
Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and as recently as a few months ago, I never would have thought that this couple sitting next to me would be the guests on the podcast today. That's because I am not a granola guy. We grew up eating granola bars. They were kind of like that healthy snack, but I was never really a fan, and basically as soon as it was my choice, Mom wasn't like shoving them down my throat, I was like, nope, I'm good. I don't need that anymore. And then I encountered the gourmet granola at an Omaha farmer's market. I got a chance to meet Nicole, who is one of the owners, and I was like, I've seen the light. I'm changed. And I have to talk to the owners about this, or from this place, about their product today, because it has changed the way that I look at granola. So without further ado, the owners of the Gourmet Granola, Nicole and Glenn Wigodsky, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
us.
So, how often do you guys hear stories similar to what I just told? Like, somebody grew up eating granola bars, their parents made them, whatever. Maybe they even choke down granola bars because they think it's healthy, but they don't really, like, it's a better snack than candy or something like that, but they don't really like it. And then they meet your product, and it's just like, whoa, this is different. I'm guessing that's a story that you hear very often.
It's almost a daily mention that we hear that there are granola bars or our granola just blows their mind. That they didn't expect a product to taste as good as ours does.
Yeah, and I think so many people grow up thinking granola healthy, granola bars healthy, and then they find out later in life sometimes because maybe they're not checking ingredients and stuff like that as kids that wasn't really all that healthy. In fact, a lot of them are full of junk. And so I think a lot of people, once they encounter our products, they just recognize that it's not full of garbage and it tastes good. So, hey, I'm a granola fan now. I wasn't before, but now I am.
So let's hit on that right away, because I think that that's very important, that not only does actually these two things go hand in hand. You're not putting a bunch of junk in there, and that's a big part of why these taste good. So break that down for me, because I know that these were created for healthy reasons, for health reasons. So kind of just tell me, like, why is this better for someone's body than the granola bar they think is healthy?
Yeah, so we actually started this 11 years ago, actually in our home kitchen. I was struggling with infertility and was also diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I did a ton of research on that particular, and what I found is it mostly is almost like a diabetic issue where you have to watch your sugars, like the oils and things that you're consuming. So I started doing a big deep dive into that, and I really didn't find much on the market that hit a lot of the points that I was looking for without the refined sugars, with the refined oils that were healthy and that actually tasted good. So I started making my own granola and granola bars, and I was also working in corporate America at the time, and we had a lot of food days. So I would bring our product, our granola bars and things to our food days, and everyone loved it. And also during this infertility struggle, one of my doctors said, why don't you take a break from trying to get pregnant and find a hobby? And at the time I was like, I'm not an old lady. What's a hobby, first of all? And so I was talking with Glenn about it, and he was like, well, everyone always likes your granola and your granola bars. Why don't you try selling that? Go to the farmer's market with it. I was like, who's going to eat our products? Who's going to eat things that I make? And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. So it was at his urging that we went to a farmer's market Mother's Day weekend 11 years ago, and we sold out the very first day. And so what that told me was that Omaha was hungry for something healthy and something tasty. And so we just kind of dove right into it, and we listened to our customers what they were looking for within products that were healthy. And one of the biggest things that we heard was people were looking for gluten-free. And so we really took that to heart, and we have our own gluten-free facility now. I started at home, we went to a shared kitchen, and then now we have our own facility that we produce and package from.
The growth is kind of crazy. And we'll get into all that, trust me. But I need to take a quick step back because I feel like we kind of breezed over a very important part in this story. Where is your mindset when you're like, okay, I want to find some healthy, things that have healthy sugars in them, a good healthy snack, to I'm going to make granola bars. Like that's a big bridge. If my doctor told me, hey, you need to cut some sugar out of your diet, Dan, I don't know. I guess I would do some research or go to the grocery store. At no point would I say, I'm making my own granola. What was that connect in your mind? Where did that come from?
So also at the time, I was doing a lot of like batch cooking.
Okay.
And so I was actually making a lot of things from scratch. And so with making a lot of things from scratch, I was also making snacks for us as part of the batch cooking. So it was just also part of like, okay, we need granola bars for the week for snacks. And so that's just really where it started, was just me just trying to just give us healthier snacks.
Glenn, you said you weren't a granola guy previously. Do you remember the first time trying?
I do, yeah. It's funny because I think I'm like most people. When I was younger, I had one of those hard kind of
cardboard,
cardboard granola bars, and I wasn't really a big fan. I never really was into granola or granola bars, and never really ate them before. And when she started making them, she would take them to work, and I would take them to work, and we liked them, but everybody else liked them as well. And so we knew we kind of hit on something that must be, that right mix of tastes good and is still good for you. Mm-hmm. And so, I think for me, it was really just, I never really thought of granola. I never really thought of granola bars, and she was making it, and I just ate it because I like to eat stuff. So, that's where it kind of began. But,
So before we go any further, I want to make sure that everyone knows, if they want to be converted, where they can get their hands on these. The Omaha Farmers Market, is it just the downtown one, or do you guys do Exarban as well?
We're at Exarban as well.
Okay, so Saturday and Sunday at the downtown and then Exarban Farmers Market. They're in stores really all over the Midwest, especially Hy-Vees, and you can order these online. They ship nationally and maybe even internationally?
Just nationally.
Just nationally. So you can't get these if you're in China. But
Unless you're in the
military, you can come visit.
If you're in the military, we'll ship to an APO.
There you go.
Yep.
Is there anything I missed that you want to hit there?
So we're in so we also do the farmers markets in the Lincoln Hay Market on Saturdays.
Oh, there you go.
And then we also do the Des Moines Farmers Market on Saturdays. We alternate on Saturdays between Lincoln and Des Moines as well.
Okay. Lots of options. So I think the number one thing, the flavor of these is very good. The number one thing that I think differentiates your granola bars from the ones that I had in my memory, and honestly, so I'll get back to my question. I did a taste test because I hadn't had a granola bar in probably 10 or 15 years. So I was like, were they really as bad as I remember them being? And so to prepare for this podcast, I went out and got, your store brand granola bar, took one bite, spit it out, and was just like, nope, don't need that. I don't want to eat that. That's not good. So, but it reminded me, the thing that I didn't like about those is the texture is so bad. It's just it gets stuck in your teeth. You're just chewing and chewing and chewing. Yours are softer. They're less crunchy. They're just a little bit more digestible. How do you achieve that texture? Because I think in granola, the texture is arguably just as important as the flavor.
So I actually had a customer a couple years ago. She called our granola bars grookies, a granola bar cookie. And I feel like
I like that.
was the perfect description for our granola bars, where
Guess
it's
we
kind
just
of
found a name change.
right. So it's almost like it's where it's like crunchy on the outside, but then chewy on the inside, which is like a good cookie. And that was one of the things that I don't know, it's just within our process on how we achieve that texture of our granola bars, because we actually make the granola first. And then we add a little bit of rice cereal, coconut oil, honey, and coconut sugar. It's not much to it, but it's within the blend of all the ingredients together, the way that it's pressed, that makes it such a delicious snack.
Yeah, I think, that, and we don't use a lot of the really heavy equipment that they typically use in manufacturing. And so, especially with granola bar manufacturing, a lot of the people that manufacture them go from the raw ingredient all the way to the bar in a matter of like no time at all. It's basically throw a bunch of ingredients into a machine, it rolls it out and presses it, and then it cuts it, and you're good to go. And that, I think, is part of the reason why you get that texture, is because they have to put a bunch of stuff in there that's going to hold it together and that's going to make it actually last through the process and be able to hold together when you get to the final bar product. Whereas our stuff is, we say it's made with nothing but love. And really, I mean, we put a lot into getting from just the granola to the actual bar. And like she said, we make the granola first. So a lot of times the granola bar isn't really from granola. It's just oats and all the other ingredients that would go into granola, but they never really make it into granola first. It just goes straight into that bar. And so I think that definitely helps get the texture that we are able to accomplish.
Yeah, and I actually, for many years, hand-pressed all of our granola bars.
I saw the photos on Instagram.
Yes.
Your hands went through the ringer.
Yes, I had what I called boxer hands. And Glenn finally found a machine in 2022.
Something like that, yeah.
Finally found a machine that actually helps me press the bars. So we finally got a pressing machine, and my hands are very thankful for it.
And, it's not like you can just go on the internet and type in granola bar pressing machine. Trust me, I tried that many a time. It didn't exactly work. And so, a lot of what we've done, we've had to kind of repurpose machinery that was meant for something different and turn it into something that worked with our process. And so that's how we ultimately got to a point where she doesn't have to beat them like a boxer.
So wait, where did you get this machine? And you had to like jerry rig it yourself to...
We didn't exactly have to jerry rig it, because it's meant for pressing crumbs for like the bottom of any sort of a crumb cake or like a cheesecake or something like that. That it presses that base layer. And so we figured, all we need is something that's going to give a nice constant even pressure to be able to create what she does by hand. And ultimately we were able to accomplish that with this machine.
And we found it, and it's actually built in Michigan.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the first time you ran a batch with that machine and you saw that it worked and it was going to like take that part of the process, were you just like weeping with joy?
I wasn't necessarily weeping. I was actually more shooting eye bullets to this one because he didn't find it fast enough.
But he did find it.
He did.
See,
he did.
Yes.
And we asked them, we're like, well, how long have you been manufacturing this machine? Because it's also the same manufacturer as the machine that cuts our granola bars. And they're like, oh, we've had this machine for, I don't know, decades or something like that. And so that definitely resulted in some eye bullets.
And really the reason I even found it, because like I said, you can't really go and Google granola bar pressing machine.
Right.
I was on their website looking for something related to the cutting machine. I think maybe even just looking for a new cutting machine, and happened to click on their crumb press, and it seemed to do exactly what we needed.
And now we know you guys' marriage survived that.
Yes.
This is good to see.
Yes.
So something I'm curious about is, we've talked a lot about granola bars so far, but you guys also just sell the granola itself and granola clusters, and there are, I think, 10 flavors of granola itself. There are 5 flavors of granola bars. Does some granola just not go well into bar form?
Yes. So our bourbon maple and our mocha are just strictly granola only. For the bourbon maple, I think I did about 17 different test batches of it into granola bars, and I just did not like the flavor on how it transitioned over into the granola bar. And I have pretty high standards on how the flavor tastes when it comes to the granola bars, and if it just doesn't pass my test, it just doesn't happen. And same with the mocha. We found that the honey flavor really comes through a lot within the mocha, and I really couldn't get that. I didn't want it to be like because I don't want to use any artificial flavorings, and so the mocha coffee flavor just really didn't come through too much within the granola bar. So again, it just didn't pass my test. So, and I love it as granola only, and the mocha personally for me is my favorite for overnight oatmeal.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, as I was looking on the site and I saw the bourbon maple, I was like, "Ooh, that sounds perfect." And then it's not in bar form, and I traditionally just eat it in the bars, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder why that is." But it makes sense. I mean, you want to put out your best quality product, and if it doesn't meet your standards, you're not going to sell it. That makes sense. How did you? I know your flavor lineup hasn't changed a lot over the last couple of years. How did you originally develop that flavor lineup?
So we first started, actually, our first flavor was our cinnamon vanilla almond. So the real funny story is we actually did not intend to actually sell granola. We actually intended to be a granola bar company. And because we make the granola first before we press it into the bars, Glenn at our first farmer's market said, "Why don't you just make a batch of the granola, put it in bags, and sell it?" And I was like, who's going to eat granola? People want snacks. And that was actually our first product that sold out, was our granola. So that's when we realized that people were also wanting just regular granola for their yogurts or milk or cereal. And so then we also heard, because we made it with almonds, that there was a lot of folks with nut allergies. So then we started making it just leaving out the almonds. And then we had like our lemon almond, I saw lemon extract on the shelf, and I was like, I wonder if I can make granola with lemon. And then I started doing test batches with the lemon. Let's see, what was another one? The bourbon maple was my COVID creation. I figured we were all drinking, so I wondered if we could make granola with bourbon with alcohol. And guess what? You can. So that's how the bourbon maple. We also wanted to have a few items that were made without honey, because there's a lot of folks out there that have a fructose allergy where they can't have honey. So we wanted to have some vegan options. So we tried to cater to a lot of different allergens within our product. So it may not be one item, but maybe another item within our lineup that would be able to meet a lot of dietary restrictions.
Will we ever see pumpkin spice?
Yes.
Come back to the root. Oh, yes.
So pumpkin is very popular. It comes out the end of September. And then so pumpkin spice comes both as a granola as well as a granola bar. And then we also do, in the winter, we do a gingerbread granola.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, my interest is very piqued in that. But those are strictly seasonal.
Strictly seasonal.
Okay.
Yes, we have people ask for pumpkin spice year round, but we like to keep it a very special item that comes just one time a year.
Yep.
And so we tell people, if you love it, you have to stock up on it.
Fair enough. Are you guys still playing around with flavors, or do you feel like the flavor lineup is pretty set at this point?
So we have a number of flavors that we could put into our rotation, if you will. The challenge is the cost of producing all of the packaging. You have to purchase large quantities of it, and so we only have so much space on the shelves in grocery stores. So getting additional flavors sometimes can be difficult in getting them into stores, and then the cost of the packaging, you're talking a pretty significant investment. So we try to keep, we're actually going through a design process right now to make some updates to our packaging that's going to go across all of the packaging. But we try to keep them, similar so that it's easy enough to add a flavor if we so choose at some point. But yeah, for the most part, it's just cost prohibitive.
Those are the things that people don't think about. Yeah, if you introduce a new flavor, you got to create a new design. You have to order, I don't even know how many thousands of bags and boxes and individual wrappers. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
You guys ever mess around with mint?
I have not personally. It just is a really strong flavor. I just don't know how that would transition so into like the granola. One of the flavors that we have played around with is a Mexican chocolate,
Ooh, yeah.
like a spicy granola.
I could get behind that.
Yeah, that was one that we've kind of played around with. I have a really sensitive palate where I just don't do spicy, so he was my tester.
We've also got a turmeric that we could put in
Ooh.
to rotation at some point, but again, it's so difficult with the cost and then the ability to get it on store shelves.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first started, within that first year, we also had an apple that did well, but the apple ingredient itself just wasn't very shelf stable. So we had to kind of pull that one just because it really affected the texture of the granola. We've had some things that we put out, and then we've realized that it may not be sustainable, whether it be longevity of the product or just the cost of the items too is going to be cost prohibitive.
To be clear, I agree with you. I don't think mint would work. It's just when you mentioned lemon extract, I love mint, like all things mint. So immediately my mind was like, oh, would mint extract work? And the more I thought about it, I was like, I might be the only person on the planet who likes mint enough to eat that. So that's probably not a worthy investment at all. But the other flavors that you mentioned, turmeric and Mexican chocolate, sign me up. I would happily try one of those. So something that I'm really curious about, I mean, you've had this business for 11 years now. So we're going back to 2014. During that span of time, what the American diet defines as healthy has changed God knows how many times. I mean, there are diet fads that come and go. There's now sugar is the enemy. Now fat is the enemy. Now, this is why America's unhealthy, yada, 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 super processed foods. I mean, like, it has changed so many times, and yet you guys have had that staying power. You've maintained throughout this entire time. What do you think it is about your product that, as the American diet just continues to ebb and flow, you guys have been consistent throughout that?
Well, I like to think that we kind of just like stripped away a lot of the junk within much of our diets, that we just stripped away a lot of what was in a lot of products, where we just stripped it down to just like our peanut butter granola is 5 ingredients.
Yeah, I think simple, healthy ingredients. That's what it really comes down to. Is simple, healthy ingredients are always going to be popular to at least a certain subset of the American customers, and so we're constantly trying to get more people to try them and to enjoy the fact that they're not full of garbage, because sometimes the garbage is what people like. But
garbage often tastes good.
It often does.
Makes you feel
good.
bad later.
Yeah, but it often tastes good, and so we've tried to strip everything down to just real simple ingredients.
Yeah, we're real people. We're not food scientists, and we like to just be able to. I mean, most of the ingredients that we use are in most people's pantries.
Yeah, if you go on Gourmet Granola's website, you can see with each product, it lists out. It actually has a cool little graphic that shows the 5 or 6 ingredients, whatever it is. I don't know no, it's not on the individual packaging itself.
It'll be on like the granola itself.
Right. Okay.
Yep. It is on the boxes and then on the bars inside as well.
Yes. I was just looking for the fun little graphic.
Oh.
I think that's so cool.
That'll probably be on the new packaging.
There you go.
Look for that on the new packaging.
Look for that. How did you guys meet originally?
So we met almost 20 years ago. I was in school full time, and I was working also full time, and I had a schedule change with my work where I had to change my school schedule. So I had to switch my public speaking class to a weekend class, and I saw this guy walk up.
Well, and I'm a glutton for punishment, so I decided just to take a public speaking class for the heck of it, because I had already been out of college for several years at that point. Candidly, I was also trying to defer student loans, and so you had to take at least a class or two in order to do that. So I took things like rock climbing and sailing and stuff like that to defer those loans, and just so happened to need to get into a class for the last couple of weeks of a semester because I hadn't done so yet, and there was a public speaking class available, and so I think it was the night before the class or something, 2 days before the class, I signed up for it.
Yep, and I saw this he walked up with someone showing him where the class was, and he basically walked right up to me, and here we are now 20 years later.
Running a successful, thriving business.
Yeah. I actually have a degree in communications and interpersonal and organizational communication, and you have one in business.
Music business management.
Yep.
Which I don't do anything with.
Yeah, you played drums professionally.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't talk too much about that period of my life at this point, just because it was an abrupt end, and so.
Fair enough. We can move on.
Yeah.
Just kind of walk me through a little bit more. I know that this came from. It's a very positive thing now, but this came from a dark moment in your life, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. Can you just kind of take me back to? I mean, when you get that diagnosis, and infertility is something that is not discussed by the general public really at all, and it affects a lot of people, and it's a really, really painful process that infiltrates really every single day. How did you, as you're going through this, and I know how tough it is, how did you pick yourself up to the point where you could create a new product? You said you were creating all kinds of food, but how did you get yourself to that point mentally where you were ready to create?
It was actually what brought me out of the darkness, was actually creating and getting my hands busy and getting myself into something that kept me moving, that really helped bring me out of the darkness. I really think that granola actually brought me out of that depression that comes with dealing with infertility. It is a very lonely struggle journey that you go on. I know you have your partner to go with you too, but as a woman, it's hard to have sometimes those discussions with what you're actually feeling and what going on mentally or even physically going on. And by getting my hands busy and into the bowls and into the pressing part of it, it just helped keep me moving and going with that.
Well, I mean, you are very transparent with your story. I mean, it's on the packaging, it's on the website. If somebody comes up to your booth at the farmer's market, I mean, it's not going to be your first selling point, but if you get in conversation, you'll talk about that with people. Why do you think it's so important to have that as part of your story? So
when we actually were designing our packaging, Glenn asked, he goes, well, what do you want to have as the story? And I said, we need to have our story. And he was like, are you sure you want to put that on there? I said, absolutely. Because the next woman that reads that, who is going through that struggle, she knows that she's not alone, that there is somebody else that is feeling and going through exactly what they're going through as well. And so it was just something that we just didn't want to shy away from, because it is the reason why we started.
Did either of you have any experience in food or restaurant industry at all before this?
None. I came from an insurance background.
I did have restaurant experience. There was about 3 days that I worked for a restaurant here in Omaha. I ended up getting fired pretty quickly because I spilled a whole bunch of water on a lady that was a guest there. So it wasn't necessarily positive. But no, I worked in a kitchen. The Garden Cafe isn't around anymore, but I worked in their kitchen for a summer, and that was about it for me.
Yeah, and I did work at so I grew up in Southern California. Mm-hmm. I actually worked at Disneyland for a couple of years. I worked in one of the restaurants in high school, so I did have some restaurant, just back of the house kitchen experience, but not really start to finish food packaging, food manufacturing, just kitchen experience.
I actually wanted to ask you about that, and I was going to save it for later, but let's just go right now. You worked at Disneyland for 4 years. Obviously, that is a place in a company that has its processes, its details, everything down to a T, and that's how they create such a great customer experience. what did those years at Disneyland, what did you learn from those that you feel like helped inform what you do today?
So I think the biggest thing for me is customer service. I always put the customer first whenever any sort of interaction, or even just even last night with packaging our shipping items, I was telling him, okay, no, put it this way, so that way when a customer opens it, it's front facing for them. So I just also even want to have, just when they open up a package from us, it's already an experience with just already being a beautiful item that's coming to them. But for me, it's customer service. I went through Disney University twice because I did a program through our high school, and that actually put us through the university. And then when I got hired on officially for Disney, I went through it a second time. So for me, it's just customer service and just working with that experience of a customer and what they're going to see and feel and experience with our products.
For those unaware, what's Disney University?
It's really going through the whole process of Disney, just the history, had the customer interactions, the magic behind everything. Yeah, I worked for a mouse.
Now I'm gonna forget what it was, but there's a very famous book about like the Disney culture and the workplace and everything, that when I started a job a couple years ago, they had us read that book, and I remember there were so many things from that I took with me because everything is so detailed there. Like, they create great experiences because they have their employees thinking about those details. Like, if somebody opens a package, is it going to be facing them? If you open it, is it going to be upside down? That's kind of weird. If you're walking along the path and there's garbage there, that's not a good look for Disney. Any employee, whether it's Walt Disney himself, pick that up and throw it away. So anyway, I just thought that was really unique, and I was sure that it informed what you do today somehow. But let's get back to the story. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's kind of interesting because, I didn't go through Disney University, but obviously being married to her, I know enough about their process at this point to know, to me, it's about stuff like they call their employees cast members, right? Like they're part of the cast, and so they look at everything as a production.
And they wear costumes.
And, even simple things, I kind of made this gesture of pointing, like they keep in mind not just what the local customer is going to experience, but they're a global brand. So they're thinking about, what do other cultures think of X, Y, or Z? And so, some cultures don't like when you point with one finger. So for them, it's two, or it's the entire hand. And so,
and it's things that I don't even think about, but he still points it out that I still do a lot of those things from that.
Okay. Enough Disney. We gave them their good promo. Back to the story. How did you develop your granola recipe? Like, how many iterations did it take? Was it easy, or did you really have to fight through it? Just take me into that process.
It's different for each flavor. So the cinnamon vanilla almond really was like a first hit. It really didn't take much changes with regards to that one. Lemon took a few because I tried doing it. The first time I did lemon, I did it without salt. I was trying to make it without salt, and as soon as I added salt, it worked perfect. Bourbon took a few. That was one I was trying to actually do without cinnamon, because there's also folks out there that have a cinnamon allergy. So I was trying to also make another product that was cinnamon free for those customers that have a cinnamon allergy. And I just couldn't, the flavor just wasn't hitting right on the palate. And then I was like, all right, we've got to add cinnamon. And as soon as we add cinnamon to it, it was perfect.
Glenn, what do you remember about those times when she started first making granola, as she's taking them to coworkers, everything like that? What's your memory from that?
It's hard. It's been so long. I really couldn't.
I know. I'm taking you back like 12 or 13 years now, probably.
I think one of the things was just that process. Like, there were a couple flavors where right away you knew it didn't need anything else. Like, it was perfect the way it was. And then some of the things that she had tried, we went through a lot of taste testing, and like I said, I like to eat. That being said, sometimes I don't like to eat the stuff that doesn't turn out well. So, you may have to eat stuff 5, 6, 10, 15 times before you get to that right one. And so I do remember certainly in some of the flavors, that process of really finding the right palate and finding the right mixture of ingredients to get to that point where that it's not just going to be something you're going to like, but something that other people are going to like as well.
Yeah, so one thing that we also used to do on our peanut butter granola bars is we used to put a chocolate drizzle on top of our peanut butter bars. And with going to the farmer's market, it's hot.
Oh, yeah.
So
melting everywhere.
It was melting everywhere. So I just was like, I'm done. It didn't provide any sort of benefit to the product. And so I just nixed it. And
for a period of time, we were even like putting it on ice to bring it to the farmer's market. But, you do that a couple of times and you recognize like this isn't really sustainable. This isn't something that we can keep up forever.
And it's delicious enough on its own. I mean, chocolate makes everything better, but it doesn't need the chocolate
exactly.
to stand out. So something that you just said, Glenn, kind of sparked in my mind. Like, it's interesting because we all have different palates. You don't like spicy food. I love spicy food. I use hot sauce in probably 70% of my meals and just can't get enough of it. When you're creating a product that you want to be appealing to every palate, how do you do that? Like, how do you balance, like, when you taste something, if you love the flavor, like, take cinnamon vanilla. Some people don't like the flavor of vanilla. If you love vanilla, you could eat that and be like, yes, this is perfect. I nailed it. But you want to also cater to the people who might not like vanilla as much. So, like, how do you balance that and acknowledge that I think this is really great? How do we know that the public thinks that this will be great?
So one of the things that I had to learn, and I'm still learning, is it can't be everything to everyone. And that's a thing that I struggle with still to this day. I still try and I want to be everything to everybody, but he has to remind me you can't cater to everybody. So that's why we also have multiple flavors. Is not just one flavor or two flavors. There's multiple flavors for all the different types of palettes that are out there.
Yeah, and we have a number of customers that just really don't like some of our flavors or would never even try some of our flavors, but they love others, and that's really what matters, is that we find enough to appeal to as many people as possible without kind of pigeonholing into a place where we're only appealing to a small subset of customers. And so that's why we create the variety. And yeah, like she said, I constantly have to remind her that you can't be everything to everyone. And so that's another part of the question that you asked earlier about other flavors, is we can't do everything. Mm-hmm. And so as much as it might be nice to constantly have a new flavor and change things up a little bit, it's just not feasible for where we're at right now. I mean, maybe at some point in the future, we have a large enough staff and we have a large enough bank account that, all of those things are feasible. But at least until we get to that point, you can't appeal to everybody all the time.
Yeah, because I actually make all of our granola bars, and he actually makes all of our granola, and we just have one other part-time person that works 12 hours a week that does all of our packaging. So we actually do it all.
So if somebody's eating one of these bars or one of these clusters, it came from you guys' hands.
Yes.
Or the machine now, thankfully. Not just your hands.
Well, it's still partially with our hands. I mean, it's all mixing and putting everything together, but...
Yes, I just mean no more boxer hands.
No more boxer hands, yes. I still have the scars from it.
Okay, so you start taking them into coworkers. You're getting good feedback. People are saying, we like these. Glenn, what was it that made you take that next step and say, well, let's try a farmer's market? Because that is a big step to put yourself out there. I mean, friends and coworkers can be like, oh, yeah, these are great. But to go through the process of making branding and getting approved for the farmer's market and, putting yourself out there and being like, is anybody going to come buy this? That's a really big step. What made you encourage Nicole to take that step?
Yeah, so actually it was, like she said earlier, her doctor told her it's time to start putting your energy somewhere else and stop thinking about, trying to have a baby. Start focusing on a hobby. And as she mentioned, she didn't really know what a hobby was. So I just encouraged her to take it to the farmer's market since it was something she really enjoyed doing, making the granola and the granola bars. Why not take it and see if other people might like it? And
what's really funny is, so my parents had given me some money to get LASIK. And we took that money that was supposed to be for LASIK and actually invested it into the startup of our business of starting the Gourmet Granola.
Which is why she still wears glasses.
Yes.
A worthy investment. So you mentioned it's Mother's Day. That was your first day at the farmer's market. You sell out. Just take me back to that day. What memories pop to the front of your mind when you think about that?
So it was actually my mom was in town for that weekend. So my mom was actually here. My parents actually still live in California. So it was actually a really great weekend to be with my mom with the start of our business, and that she was able to be here just while we started it and being with customers. And then afterwards we ate at Jackson Street Tavern after we packed up everything. And then that actually became a tradition for a while after the farmer's market was to go to Jackson Street and have lunch with their bruschetta, which is amazing.
Oh, it's a fantastic restaurant.
Yes. So it just reminds me of just with being with my mom. I'm very close to her, and just being with my mom that weekend while we got this business started.
Yeah. And, we sold out that first weekend. And so the way that the farmer's market works is when you're new, you have the opportunity to go there on a kind of a weekly basis. So some weeks you can get in, some weeks you can't get in. And so we just figured, let's try to get in another week. And I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, they let us back in and kind of had the same result. And so at a certain point, we realized that if we're going to actually make it a business and not just be the hobby, that we would need to get into a commercial kitchen. And so a couple months after that, we entered into a shared kitchen, as she had mentioned before. And then several months after that, we actually ended up taking over that space, expanding it a little bit, and providing a shared kitchen for other people to come and start their businesses in.
Yeah, we started a commissary kitchen. We actually
Really? I did not know this.
Yes.
That was a great way.
We were actually
for
one
us.
of the first commissary kitchens.
Yeah, it was a great way for us to defray our costs and keep our costs as low as possible while we grew and got to a point where we could really afford to do our own space. And we had a number of different food businesses, from food trucks to people that did catering to people that were also trying to do things like what we're doing.
So I want to go back to first farmer's market day real quick. Not to dredge up bad memories, but I think that there's just this beautiful synergy in that Mother's Day had the opportunity to be just a devastating day for you. And I'm sure on some level you wanted to just stay in bed all day and just be like, this is the worst day. I'm just being reminded of everything I don't have. And instead, you got this amazing blessing. You had this product that you believed in, but it's I don't know if the public is going to want this. I don't know if they're going to take to it. And the public is just yes, we love it. We want more of it. How meaningful was that for you, especially to have that happen on that day, to get that validation that we're doing the right thing? What did that mean to you?
It was saying that God was telling me that I was on the right path. That's what it was telling me. That I was where I was supposed to be when I was supposed to be there. So it was God. It was a God touch for me.
So especially those first couple farmers market weekends, the first one and then the ones moving forward, where people aren't really familiar with your product, but they're kind of passing by and they're going, "Oh, what's that?" And then they're walking up and they're trying it. You're very good about giving out samples so people try it. What type of comments were you getting from people, or what was the level of surprise that you encountered?
I really want to set up a GoPro camera one of these times when I'm at the farmer's market when people are trying samples of our granola bars, because it's not necessarily the words, it's the expressions.
Yes.
That we see. So it's a facial expression's 1,000 words, right? And I would love to just set up a camera just to capture the moments that people just the pure joy that they receive when tasting a little sample of our granola bars.
Especially the little kids. That's always fun because, kids at the farmer's market, you can kind of tell, like a lot of times they don't want to like it, or they don't want to show that they like it, or, they don't even want to try it. And then all of a sudden they do, and their face lights up. And so that's always exciting. I think also it's kind of funny, 11 years later, we get a lot of people that have eaten our granola for years, and they come up and say, "Oh, I didn't even know you had granola bars." And so that's kind of interesting as well, is that experience is always, it's different for us because, again, that's where we started. And so for us to hear that from a customer who had told us just a second ago, "Hey, I've been buying your products for years, maybe in the grocery store or whatever, but I didn't know you had granola bars." It's like, wow.
I've started to do the whole McDonald's thing. Would you like granola bars with that? Just to kind of help with some of that too.
You want to supersize your granola?
Yes.
Speaking of grocery stores, I mean, it's a huge step to go from we're doing farmers markets, even as many farmers markets as you guys are doing, but to scale up and be able to provide enough product for grocery stores. I mean, if you go into Hy-Vee, there's 5 or 6 different kinds of bars, a couple different kinds of granola. You multiply that by how many Hy-Vees there are. You multiply that by how many other stores there are. I mean, that's a lot of extra work, but it's also huge because you are opening yourself up to X, number of people that would not go to the farmer's market that are going through Hy-Vee. 2016 was when you got into Hy-Vee. How did that happen?
How did that?
It actually wasn't that difficult per se.
He handles most of the sales, so I'll let him discuss that one.
Hy-Vee is very good with local, and they're a locally owned company based out of Des Moines, and they're an employee-owned company, and so there's incentive for the people in each of the stores to bring in products that are local to their area. And so really we just went to the health market. We said, "Hey, this is the product that we have. We have these ingredients that fit within your subset of the store. And so can we get on your shelves?" And we started with one and basically leveraged that by, I think we maybe had them write a letter or something. Or we didn't have them write a letter, but we had a letter that we wrote that we had them basically endorse, and then we were able to go into all of the other stores. What's interesting is that, because we are a small company, we've chosen not to have everything co-packed, which a lot of companies choose to do, which basically means somebody else is making your product and you're just selling it. And so we've chosen to actually create the kitchen and make the product from start to finish and distribute it into the stores. And so we've gotten to a point where, we were in a lot more Hy-Vee stores than we're in now. Because each store would start to sell more and more and more. And so stores that were a little bit further out got a little bit less attention, and we just decided, we can't keep up with that whole process. So we pulled our stuff out of a number of stores, which we hope to get back into using their distribution channel, but still making the product ourselves. And so hopefully this year, actually, we'll start to move into a number of other stores, but really, the Omaha, Lincoln, Council Bluffs area is what gets our focus and attention at this point.
Why not co-pack?
So in some respects, there's a lot of benefits and advantages to co-packing. Obviously, you're kind of hands-off at that point. You just give them the recipes and let them go. And their production capabilities obviously are significantly greater than what ours are, because they have all of the equipment and everything like that. Part of it was a long-term vision of actually creating something that was worthy of being able to be sold at some point. And if somebody else is making your product, you have a brand that can certainly be sold, but there's all those other assets that go along with it that that aren't necessarily part of that sale. But I think more importantly, it was we'd seen a number of companies come into business and go out of business because you don't have control over any of the actual product that's going out. And so, it could be one recall, it could be, one bad experience that a store chain has, or, really any part of that process where your entire business could get nuked, all because you didn't have control over some of those aspects of it.
You're trusting someone else to create your product, which can go over great. But yeah, if somebody makes a mistake, it's not them who's getting in trouble. It's not their name on the packaging. So, I mean, I hope that you guys get the opportunity to continue to expand, but I love that you just continue to make it all yourself. I'm sure you hate that sometimes, some days, but
like our bars
it comes
probably
through.
wouldn't be able to be co-packed just within our process. So that's one thing that probably wouldn't be. I've been pushing to get a bigger pressing machine so I can start making bigger trays of granola bars.
Imagine that she gets a pressing machine finally, and now she wants a bigger one.
Now
I want a bigger one. So that's our goal, and so hopefully, maybe fingers crossed, we can start working on getting that new one. Just a big investment.
Okay, 2017, you leave your full-time job to make Gourmet Granola your full-time job. What were those conversations leading up to that decision like, and what ultimately led you to say this is the right path for us?
I was just run ragged because I was working full-time, and then I would leave my job and go straight to the kitchen, and was working in the kitchen for 6 hours.
I'd say almost another full-time job, so basically 2 full-time jobs.
And I finally just said, we need to make a choice. Either I leave my job or we wrap up business. One of the two has to happen. And so we took that chance. And I don't miss it.
I don't blame you.
I work twice as hard now, though, I'd say.
Well, I want to get into that because in 2021, you had an Instagram post where you posed a question to yourself, essentially. You said, how many times did we want to give up? Countless. Pull back the curtain for me. Like, what are the hard times in this business, and what gave you the strength to push through those?
So the hard times are, so we actually just really went through one where we had, I think, almost all of our stores put in orders at the same time. And not only that, but we were also, it was the time of junk stock.
Oh, yes.
The beginning of farmers market season. So it was, everybody was wanting product all at the same time. And so it was just really hard with keeping up with the production, and then also with keeping all the stores happy, and then making sure all people are getting the product that they're looking for, but also keeping up with the quality of the product. And so it's long days, it's hard days, but very thankful days, because not everybody can say that they are, like, our warehouse side has no back stock. Like, we're literally making it before it's sold. And so that's our biggest struggle, is just keeping up with everything all at the same time. It's just a lot of things all at once. It's the keeping all the ducks in the row. There was one time that the wrapping machine for the granola bars was acting up, and it was just it's just a small thing, but it was one thing on top of everything else that was happening, and you just break down into tears just because it's such a small thing, but it's just like that one extra thing that's happening. And I'm calling him, and I'm just in tears on the floor, just like, I can't do this anymore. Why is this all happening? And there's been many phone calls to him, just in tears, just because I just need to get the tears out. And it's okay to cry.
Mm-hmm. And that's what marriage is all about. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times this happened with my wife and I. In great marriages, when one person is just like done, the other one is there for them. Because there will be times when the other person is just done, and the other person has to be the rock. So I think that's really important. We're running low on time here, but I have to ask you about this. you guys have twice been a Ted and Wally's flavor. At least twice that I could find on Instagram. Maybe it's been more, but I know that they made an ice cream out of your pumpkin spice. I know they made an ice cream out of the peanut butter. So I have to know, how did that partnership come to be? And I'm sure you tried them. Were they good?
They were delicious.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's Ted and Wally's.
Yes. I don't know. We just kind of got busy with everything else that was happening. And I would love to work to do more collaborations around town with different places. I know that we had for like our April Fools this year was a granola. What was it?
It was an oatmeal stout.
Oh.
So
it was our April Fools was an oatmeal stout, and I did it as an April Fools, but was also kind of halfway hoping that maybe something would happen with it.
Well, and I can't tell you how many people reached out and they were upset because it wasn't real.
Did they not know that anything that any company puts out on April 1st is not real? Like, people, the public awareness, ridiculous.
We've also had a partnership. We've done collaborations with Carter and Rye.
Oh, yeah, I love Carter and Rye, the ham pies.
Yep, they did an orange creamsicle with our orange vanilla granola, and it is one of my favorites. And I always ask Kate for it to come back, but she always sells out of those ones really, really fast. But yeah, we would love to do more collaborations.
I mean, it's a versatile product. It could easily be worked into many different food preparations. I would love to see that. Last question I got for you. I mean, we're going on 11 years here. You guys have touched on this a little bit, but what's the future of Gourmet Granola as you kind of look into what this thing has been, what it's come from, what it could be?
Co-packer. No, I'm just kidding.
All that bad stuff I said about co-packing, we're actually in the process of implementing that.
Well, and actually we are in kind of the early stages of working with another company to not co-pack per se, but to utilize some of their resources to just be able to produce a lot faster. And so we're finding ways to be creative about the idea of co-packing without actually losing all of that control. So I actually go and produce with these folks and their employees, which are fantastic. But I'm there. I'm still part of that process, and I'm still, there from start to finish. I'm still, mixing up product. I'm still putting trays in the oven, pulling them out, all that stuff. And so that's kind of the next step for us right now, is to just be able to increase that production so that, as I mentioned before, we can start working with the distribution center at Hy-Vee and actually just get into all their stores without me having to go into each individual store and put the product on the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because right now he actually goes to each store on a rotation basis and actually puts the product on the shelves. So, yeah, he does that every week. You go around to stores and do that.
Be nice to be able to check that off the list. Not have to do that.
Yeah.
There is so much more that I can talk to you guys about, because I just as good as the product is, I'm just so inspired by someone who decided to make their own thing, had the guts to take it to a farmer's market and be like, is the public going to like this? And then to quit their job, to do this full time, to do it all by hand until the machine comes in. And even now with the machine, you're still doing so much by hand. To push through the days where you're just laying on the floor and calling each other, you guys are an inspiration. And I hope that this isn't just something that lasts 11 years or 22 years, but it keeps going and going, because it's really cool to see what you've done and what you've built. And I'm sure that you get chances to do this, but when you get heads down in the day-to-day and you're just constantly thinking about production and what's next, I hope you get the chance to think about, holy crap, this is amazing what we've done, what God has helped us do. And to just people, I mean, we've said it a million times, but I'm going to say it again. It doesn't matter if you like granola bars or granola. I didn't think that I did. This stuff is awesome. I'm not just saying that. You can look at my Instagram. You can talk to my wife. I eat these things all the time, and they were, like I said, I went 15 years or so where I didn't even touch a granola bar, didn't want one. So go to Hy-Vee, go to the farmer's market, talk to Nicole, get on the GoPro, and just try one. She'll give you a free sample, and you'll understand. I guarantee it. Nicole and Glenn, thank you so much for giving me the time to come on the podcast today. I genuinely appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
having
much.
us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.